The Crown Season 4. The Crown Season 4 is probably the most talked about show right now, and is once again created by Peter Morgan, and is a direct continuation from The Crown Season 3. So, present their roles as a royal family, we have Olivia Colman once again as the Queen, Tobias Menzies once again as Prince Phillip, Helena once again as Princess Margret, Marion once again as the Queen Mother, Josh O'Connor once again as Prince Charles, who has a much bigger role in the series, and Erin Doherty once again as Princess Anne. But this season of The Crown also has two big newcomers, Corrin as Princess Diana, and Gillian as Margret Thatcher. And just before I get into what this season is about and my opinion on this season overall, just say this. It is a lie that you have to be a fan of the royal family to watch The Crown. That's a lie. Honestly, I'm not a fan of the royal family at all. I mean, I don't hate them, I'm just not a fan of them. Like, if I could choose, I wouldn't be a royal family in this country, but I'm not going to go into that. But anyway, I'm not a fan of the royal family at all. And I absolutely love the first two seasons of The Crown, and I thought season 3 was great. The reason I am so interested and so fascinated by this show is not because I'm a fan of the royal family, it's because it's so well written, it's got incredible performances, and it's so well directed, which I don't think it gets enough credit for as well. And honestly, it's just every season I get so excited to watch because it gets so fascinating to watch. But yeah, just to say, you don't have to be a fan of the royal family to watch The Crown. Honestly, I'm not, and I absolutely loved the first seasons of the show, and I thought season 3 was great. So let's get on to season 4 of The Crown. And as I might have expected, probably the main plot of season 4 of The Crown revolves around the relationship between Princess Diana and Prince Charles. One of the most famous love stories ever, and also one of the most complicated love stories ever. As we see at the start of the season, Prince Charles and Princess Diana, because she's not Princess Diana at that point, both those characters meet. And as the season carries on, we see that those two characters get engaged. We see the lead up to the wedding. We don't see the royal wedding happen, but we see the lead up to the royal wedding. And then after the royal wedding is meant to have happened, we see their marriage slowly start to fall apart. Don't be wrong, there is still some love in there. We do get to see a very young Prince William and a very young Prince Harry in the season, but ultimately there's a lot of hate in the season, and we see a lot of arguments, we see affairs taking place, and we start to see that marriage slowly start to fall apart as the series progresses. But also, one of the main plots in this season is the storyline to do with Margaret Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher, played by Gillian this season. We see her reign of power of Prime Minister from 1979 to 1990. So we see when she becomes Prime Minister in 1979 and when she resigns as Prime Minister in 1990. So we see her mainly over the period of the 80s in Britain, or over the period of the 1980s. And if anyone knows about the whole reign of Thatcher, a lot of people weren't happy about that. And basically, this series explores people's views on Thatcher. Unemployment rates in Britain go higher than they ever have before when she's Prime Minister. You see the way she's Prime Minister in the season, and it's quite her reign of power is quite interesting to watch. The way she is Prime Minister, to say the least, and that's fun into the story this season. So on one hand, we get all the storyline with Princess Diana, and on the other hand, we get the storyline with Margaret Thatcher. That's two big figures in British history, in the whole of history, really. And those two storylines are at the forefront of this season. Not mainly the storyline with Princess Diana, but the whole storyline with Margaret Thatcher is still prominent in the season. But also in the season, we get this storyline to do with a deep, dark secret to do with the royal family, and more specifically, the Queen's cousins. Now, you might have heard in the news recently, especially with this season, because it's quite controversial, that The Crown is a fictional TV show. Obviously, you know, it's based on real life events and real people. You know, the royal family does exist, but obviously the stuff that you see behind closed doors in the season, that's all fictionalized, because, you know. So you might have heard quite recently that, you know, quite a lot of The Crown is fictionalized. However, this whole thing about the deep, dark secret isn't. I looked it up after, and honestly, it's quite tragic and quite sad when you actually read about it, and when you actually see the storyline take place in, I think it's episode 7 in the season. That is quite something to watch. I'm not going to say much about this deep dark storyline, but what I'm going to say is, after I saw the episode which explored that deep dark storyline to do with the Queen's cousins, I was like speechless for an hour after. Honestly, it's quite tragic and it's quite a hard storyline to watch, but I think it's also important to watch, but at the same time, I was left speechless for an hour after I saw that storyline take place in the season. Anyway, also in the season, we get a storyline to do with somebody who breaks into Buckingham Palace twice. Yes, that did actually happen in real life. It's this person who, he has no connection to the royal family at all. He couldn't be further away from the royal family if he tried. He's an unemployed person in Britain. He lives in a dodgy part of Britain. He's getting really fed up with life, really fed up with the way Margaret Thatcher's running this country, and basically you just see him break into Buckingham Palace twice. The first time he breaks into Buckingham Palace, everyone realises, but everyone's just like, he's not going to break in again, don't worry about it. Then the second time, he actually gets in the Queen's chambers, had a conversation with the Queen. That actually happened in real life, and we actually see it take place in this season. But anyway, at the forefront of the season, probably the main storyline of the season is the storyline to do with Princess Diana, played by Corrin, and Prince Charles, played by Josh O'Connor. We see that relationship grow, we see them get engaged, we see them, you know, we don't actually see them get married, but we see the build up to the marriage, and at the same time we see that marriage starts to fall apart. But there is still some love there. There is still some sweet moments in the series between those two characters, but ultimately there's a lot of hate, there's a lot of arguments, there's a lot of affairs, and we do also get to see quite a lot of the angst and hate in that marriage as well in the season. And basically, I'm so happy that I'm going to say this. I actually think this is the best season of The Crown I've seen yet. not to diminish the first 3 seasons in any way. I actually think the first 2 seasons, especially the second season in particular, were the reason I got into the show. I think Claire Foy, Matt Smith and Vanessa Kirby all did a fantastic job playing the Queen, Prince Phillip and Princess Margaret in the first 2 seasons. Because those are the 2 seasons that really got me interested in the show. And I think the first season was still great, you know. It was the worst of 3 seasons up to that point, but that's like saying Return of the Jedi is the worst of the original Star Wars trilogy. Dark Knight Rises is the worst of Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. They're still very good, and the Crown Season 3 was still great. But in Season 4, wow, they pulled out of the bag. I cannot believe how intrigued and invested and fascinated I was into this story. Like, I can't reiterate this enough. I'm not a fan of the royal family, and I loved Season 4 of The Crown. The thing is with Season 4, I had a bit of worry and a bit of excitement going into the season. I was really excited that I cast Gillian as Margaret Thatcher. That's brilliant cast. I was really excited to see how they're going to do with that in this season, because obviously Margaret Thatcher is quite an infamous Prime Minister, to say the least. You know, she was the first female Prime Minister, which is quite significant within itself, but at the same time, she wasn't loved by everyone, let's just say that. At the same time, you also have the storyline to do with Princess Diana this season, and I was a bit worried about this storyline. Like, are they going to be a bit soft in it? I was a bit worried about it. Also, they got Emma Corrin to play, and like, I'd never heard of Emma Corrin before this season. I looked her up after I finished the season, and she only had like 3 acting credits before she came to play Princess Diana. Regardless of what she does after this, Princess Diana will undoubtedly be probably her most famous role in her entire career. I was a bit worried about how they're going to deal with the Princess Diana storyline, but the thing is though, all those worries went away by about episode 3 in the season, when I literally just sat down and I was like, yeah, this is the season I wanted it to be. Honestly, I absolutely love Season 4. That's not to say I don't have criticism to do with the season, because I do, and I'm going to get onto them a bit later in this video. But there are so many fantastic parts in this season. But one of the most fantastic parts I really want to talk about off the bat is the 2 fantastic performances from Emma Corrin, who plays Princess Diana, and Josh O'Connor, who plays Prince Charles. Honestly, those 2 performances are absolutely incredible in the season. I was worried with how she's going to play Princess Diana. I was also worried about how they're going to deal with the Diana storyline. And let me just say this, they went straight in the deep end with it, honestly. It's absolutely fantastic to watch, and Emma Corrin plays so well. Like, got the voice right, she's got the mannerisms right, she even looks like her. There's quite a few moments in this season in particular where I had to do kind of a double take, because she looked like a general spitting image of Princess Diana. Like, I had to do a double take because she really looked like her in quite a lot of the moments in the season. They did a fantastic job casting Emma Corrin. You know, she's got a bright career ahead of her, because her performance is incredible in the season. And Josh O'Connor as Prince Charles is also incredible in the season. You know, he was one of my favourite parts of Season 3. But he wasn't in Season 3 that much from what I can remember. He was in quite a bit, but not as much as I hoped he was going to be in. But one of the things I loved about the end of Season 3 is it made you feel sorry for Prince Charles. But then in Season 4, it makes you feel the complete opposite. Love that. That is fantastic writing, in my opinion. Josh O'Connor brought Prince Charles' life so fantastically. You know, in the end, it is Peter Morgan's version of Prince Charles, and Josh O'Connor brought it to life so fantastically in the season. Josh O'Connor as Prince Charles is absolutely fantastic. Got the voice right and everything. And honestly, when you have Princess Diana and Prince Charles in a scene together, played by Emma Corrin and Josh O'Connor, that is honestly fantastic. Both their performances are incredible. In fact, there's one episode in particular with Princess Diana where Emma Corrin really, you know, she was acting her socks off. I think it was episode 3, which is the royal engagement and the lead up to the royal wedding. Her performance in that episode was quite something, and yeah, she's absolutely fantastic. She's absolutely incredible in the season, to be honest. But anyway, let's talk about the episode. Let's talk about each episode individually. I'm going to talk about which episode I really liked, which episode I loved, or which episode I wasn't the biggest fan of. I'm going to get into mild spoilers here. I'm not going to get into big spoilers, so don't worry anything about. I'm not going to spoil anything huge in this season, but I'm going to get into mild spoilers here. So if you haven't seen the Crown Season 4 yet, I do apologise. But here we are. Let's talk about each episode individually in this season. Let's talk about episode 1. In episode 1, we saw the death of Lord Mountbatten. Lord Mountbatten, once again, played by Charles Dance in this season. The build-up happening, I was like, it's going to happen, and it happened, and it was done really well. And even so, I kind of expected it to come in. I still went like that, because that's the beauty of the Crown. I'm going to get into this again a bit later, but even so, you know these real life stories are going to happen. You know where these real life stories are going to go. You still get shocked, and you still get surprised by some of the elements that you actually see happen in the season. You also get an introduction to a young Princess Diana in this episode. Well, obviously she's not Princess Diana at that point, but you get a young introduction to Diana in this episode, which is done really well. I really like the way that episode 1 set up the rest of the season. You know, it set the tone for the rest of the season. That was a really good first episode for Season 4. Then we got on to episode 2, and episode 2 was a Balmoral test. I thought the Balmoral test was actually one of the best episodes in this season. We get to see more of Margaret Thatcher in this episode. We got an introduction to her in the first episode. We got to see her relationship with the Queen, which is quite interesting to watch. Also, in this episode, we get to see a lot more of her. And I really like the way that Gillian Anderson played Margaret Thatcher in this episode. That was really interesting to watch. There's also a bit of comedy in this episode, which worked really, really well. We also got to see how Princess Diana, well, obviously you're not Princess Diana by this point, you got to see how Diana interacted with the royal family. She spotted the stack. If you've seen the episode, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And that was a really good episode, because at the end of the episode, Prince Charles is on the phone to Camilla. He's saying something like, well, they made it clear they want me to marry her. I knew that was coming, but I still was a bit surprised by the way they wrote it and the way it was executed in that episode. It was done really, really well. That was actually one of my favourite episodes in the season. Then we get into episode 3, which was the royal engagement. Princess Diana and Prince Charles are engaged. We see the build up to the royal wedding. Again, we don't actually see the royal wedding happen, which I was fine with, by the way, but we didn't actually get to see the royal wedding happen. You get the build up in this episode. Princess Diana is left alone in Buckingham Palace for the majority of the episode, and this is where I really started to realise, okay, Emma Corrin is acting her socks off as Princess Diana, especially in this episode. She gives off an incredible performance in this episode, and also in this episode we got to see a lunch between Princess Diana and Camilla, which obviously like the two women in Prince Charles' life, which was very interesting to watch. That's all I'm going to say. And episode 3 was also the episode all my worries with the season just went away, and I just became fascinated. Emma Corrin as Princess Diana, especially in this episode, was incredible. And then we got to episode 4, and episode 4 was a favourite episode. I must admit, this was one of the weaker episodes in the season for me. Not to say it was bad in any way, it was just a good episode. It wasn't terrible, I just kind of felt it was a filler episode. Margaret Thatcher's son is missing, and the whole country is looking for her. She won't do anything, political-wise until her son is found. Whilst at the same time, Prince Phillip tells the Queen that she has a favourite child, but she didn't even know herself who that is. One of the things I did like in this episode in particular, which is that we got an introduction to Prince Edward and Prince Andrew in this episode, which we've seen them as kids before in season 3, and I think we might have seen them a bit in season 2 as young kids. They haven't been in proper talking roles up to this point. We really got an introduction to them in this episode, and that was kind of good. I like to see Prince. I like that they're starting to introduce more characters now, because each season the kind of moment seems to be adding out 10 characters, and they did it again in this season. I like that we now have Prince Edward and Prince Andrew in talking roles in this episode, which is kind of interesting. But at the same time, though, I just thought episode 4 was. It was good, it didn't pique my interest as much as some of the other episodes in the season. But then we go to episode 5. If I can remember correctly, episode 5 is the Buckingham Palace break-in episode, where somebody breaks into Buckingham Palace twice. And I actually love this episode, because the first time this guy breaks into Buckingham Palace, everyone's a bit like, oh, I don't know he's going to break in. He's not going to break in again. And then the second time he breaks into the Queen's chambers, and he actually has a conversation with the Queen. That was a fantastic episode in my opinion, because you got to see this guy who lives in a dodgy part of Britain. He's unemployed because of the way Thatcher's running the country. His wife doesn't love him anymore. His wife doesn't let him see his kids anymore. It's quite an interesting episode to watch, because you basically watch this guy slowly becoming more and more depressed, and he just breaks into Buckingham Palace twice. And that was a really, really interesting episode to watch, and I loved that episode. Then we get into episode 6, which is when Princess Diana and Prince Charles take a trip to Australia. I really liked this episode, because like I said earlier in this video, there is a bit of love in that relationship between Princess Diana and Prince Charles, and we did get to see that in this episode. We also get to see a very young Prince William in this episode. I really liked this episode, because we got to see more of those two characters together, which I don't really feel we had seen enough of up to that point. But that episode in particular was really, really interesting. Even so, there was still angst and hate between those two characters in that episode. There was also still a bit of love there, and the episode was really well shot and it was really interesting to watch. That was one of the episodes, again, I loved in this season, which was thoroughly enjoyable and thoroughly interesting, and I think Emma Corrin and Joshua Corrin, when they're on screen together, honestly, they give off amazing performances with Princess Diana and Prince Charles. Honestly, they really do. In that episode in particular, that really showcased their performances as those two characters in the season. And then we go to episode 7, and episode 7 is the episode with the deep, dark secret. I'm not going to talk about this episode much, because again, I think it's one of those episodes which I think people, if you're going to watch the season and you haven't seen this episode in particular yet, I think it's one of those episodes in particular which you really should explore by yourself. Honestly, it's quite a tragic and heartbreaking storyline to watch. It is hard to watch, but it is good to watch. That is still a very good episode. In fact, it was one of my favourite episodes of the season. That was still a fantastic episode to watch, but it was still hard to watch. It is real, that whole that secret stuff, the whole thing to the Queen's cousins. I'm not going to talk about it more than that, what the actual secret is, but all I'm going to say once again is that episode left me speechless for about an hour after I saw it, because that was really shocking to watch, and it was also quite heartbreaking. Then we get into episode 8, and episode 8, again, it wasn't one of those episodes which piqued my interest as much as some of the other episodes did. It's the episode to do with the sanctions. I think if you've seen the season, you know what I'm talking about. There's an episode to do with the sanctions, and Margaret Thatcher, she's in a different country, and the Queen, her secretaries are trying to get Margaret Thatcher to sign this agreement to do with the sanctions. I didn't love the episode. It didn't pique my interest as much as some of the other episodes. Maybe I'll go back and watch the episode again, and maybe I'll feel different about it, but for now, the episode didn't really pique my interest that much. But then we get into episode 9 and 10. And that's the thing with The Crown. Whether you loved, hated, or just thought some of the episodes in some of the early seasons of The Crown were just alright, you cannot deny that The Crown, always in its last episode, or last 2 episodes, they always pull it out the bag. And they did again in this season. Honestly, the last 2 episodes in particular I absolutely love. In episode 9, Princess Diana and Prince Charles' marriage is really falling apart. Now they're both having affairs, but then Princess Diana's like, no, I want to fight for this marriage. And as the episode progresses, we see Princess Diana she really wants to fight to make this marriage work. Prince Charles, he's still in love with Camilla, he doesn't want his marriage to work, and he just ignores for the course of the episode. And in episode 10, we see the end of Margaret Thatcher's reign as Prime Minister from in 1990, and at the same time, the season ends with all the royal family coming together for Christmas to take a Christmas royal photograph at one of their houses. We see all the family come together, and the season ended so well. Like, we see this conversation between Prince Phillip and Princess Diana, and that last speech in that last episode was absolutely fantastic. Probably one of my favourite episodes of the entire season, the entire show, to be honest, the entire show of The Crown, because the last few moments in season 4 are absolutely fantastic. And one of the things I really want to talk about to do this season, they keep adding more characters into The Crown with every new season, you know, and especially in this season when you're dealing with two of the biggest figures in British history, Princess Diana and Margaret Thatcher, you're also adding more and more characters in, like, you know, you got Prince Edward and Prince Andrew having talking roles. Now, it still managed to balance all those characters remarkably well. It's about 20 characters in this season in particular, and it still managed to balance them incredibly well. One of my biggest problems with Game of Thrones Season 8 is that there was too many characters in that season, and it just didn't balance them well, and that season just felt rushed, and it didn't feel like all the character arcs were finished particularly well. Also, in this season of The Crown, it balances them so well. I've done a character just for one episode, and they still managed to balance them so well, and that's the thing with this season of The Crown. It has about 20 characters in, 20 big characters as that, but it still managed to balance them incredibly well. But anyway, let's quickly talk about a few of my little criticisms to do with this season. One of my criticisms to do with this season is to do with how they used Helena Bonham Carter as Princess Margaret. From what I can remember, she was in quite a lot of season 3. And then in season 4, there's one episode which she's in quite prominently, and then she's kind of in quite a few of the other episodes. She'll say a line, and then she won't be in for the rest of the episode. When she does come in and out of the season, occasionally, and especially in episode 3, she says like a really prominent line, like when you get the build up to the royal wedding. She has a line like, how many times is this family going to make the same mistake? Forbidding marriages that should be allowed, and forcing ones that shouldn't. That was a really poignant quote in that episode. But then she appears every now and then in the season, but just not as much as I would have liked. And that's kind of the same with Tobias Menzies as Prince Phillip. I just really got to see more of him. And like I said, there were about 2 episodes in the season which didn't pique my interest as much as some of the other episodes. The whole episode to do the favourites, and then the whole episode to do the sanctions, just weren't as good as I would have liked, to be honest. But apart from that, I really have no other criticisms to do this season. This is probably the most controversial season of The Crown yet, because we're into this period to do Princess Diana now, which is obviously, if you know where that storyline goes, really something to watch with how The Crown's going to deal with her in the season. And in my opinion, they did an absolutely fantastic job. You know, because that's the beauty of The Crown. Even so you know where these storylines are going in real life, even so you know how Prince Charles and Princess Diana's marriage ends, you know, not to give anything away for season 5, but even so you know how that marriage ends, there's still moments in the season where it actually makes you think, oh, their marriage might succeed. Like, there's one moment in the Australia episode, Camilla's trying to get hold of Prince Charles. Prince Charles just refuses a phone call. And you think, oh my god, is their marriage going to succeed? You know where these storylines go in real life, but the writing of the show makes you think that it might go a different way, and that's the beauty of The Crown. It's just so well written. Honestly, I actually think it's one of the best Netflix original TV shows that Netflix have ever brought out. Honestly, it's absolutely incredible. And season 4 did not disappoint. In fact, I think it even exceeded my expectations. 8 out of 10 episodes in the season. I was thoroughly invested, thoroughly intrigued, and thoroughly enjoyed, and I was fascinated by those episodes. And I'm not a fan of the royal family, I can't really say that enough. I really don't care about them. But this season of The Crown in particular was just so fantastic. It's got incredible performances from everyone yet again. You know, Olivia Colman is brilliant once again as a queen. There's one moment in particular with her in the last episode, which she really acts her socks off. Tobias Menzies is once again great as Prince Phillip, and Helena Bonham Carter is once again fantastic as Princess Margaret. Just wish we got to see more of in this season. Erin Doherty, which I don't think is having enough credit in this season. Erin Doherty as Princess Anne is absolutely fantastic in the season as well. But the 2 performances which really surprised me with how good they were Emma Corrin as Princess Diana, which she is incredible, and at the same time Josh O'Connor as Prince Charles is absolutely fantastic. Those are the 2 performances that did it for me this season in particular, and I think it goes without saying Gillian as Margaret Thatcher is absolutely fantastic. Well, and it's directed so well, which I don't think The Crown gets enough credit for. It's got beautiful cinematography in quite a lot of the episodes, and it's so authentic, and it's shot so well. And for that reason, I absolutely love this season of The Crown. Incredible performances, it's so fascinating to watch. And I'm not a fan of the royal family, and I actually love this season of The Crown. And that is why I'm going to give this season of The Crown, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I'm so happy that I'm rating this season on that level, because I was a bit worried going into the season, but my worries slipped away by episode 3 and my expectations were exceeded. I absolutely love this season. It's so fantastic to watch. Even with my few criticisms to do with the season, when everything else works so well on the level it does, you just can't help but be thoroughly intrigued and thoroughly invested and thoroughly entertained, at the same time so fascinated by the way that this story goes in this season in particular. And for that reason, I'm so happy that I get to say this, I'm so happy that I want to say this, I'm going to give The Crown Season 4 a 9 out of 10 from me. Anyway guys, what did you think of The Crown Season 4? Did you love it or did you hate it? Please do comment down below and let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And just to say, if you haven't given The Crown a go yet, I highly recommend you do. Honestly, I can't reiterate this enough. You don't have to be a fan of the Royal Family to watch the show. I'm not, and I loved Season 1 and 2, and I thought Season 3 was great, and Season 4 is my favourite season yet. It's absolutely fantastic, and it's so fascinating to watch. It's well written, it's well directed, which I don't think it gets enough credit for. The performances in it are all incredible, and I love this show so much, and I'm jealous for anyone who hasn't given it a go yet, because honestly, if you haven't given it a go yet, you're missing out. It's so fantastic to watch, and I highly recommend it. So, if you haven't yet, please do go and give The Crown a go. It's so fantastic to watch, and you don't have to be a fan of the Royals to watch it. Please do go and give it a go. It's incredible, and I love it. But anyway, just before I end this video, just to say that over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be uploading a couple of pre-recorded reviews. So if they look a bit different on those reviews, that's why, because they were pre-recorded from a couple of months back. But anyway, thank you as always for watching, and if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like, subscribe on this video, and look forward to many more both film and TV reviews coming very soon on this channel. See you guys again soon, but bye for now. Bye!